It's prom night, so curl your hair, say your prayers, and don't forget your big bucket of pig's blood. That's right, we're covering the 1976 horror classic Carrie, directed by Brian DePalma and starring Sissy Spacek. Does this Stephen King adaptation warrant its reputation, or does it deserve to be pelted with tampons? Find out on this episode of Blind Spots and Second Thoughts. Welcome to another episode of Blind Spots and Second Thoughts. I'm Heather.
I'm Dan.
And I am very excited today because we are
very excited
delving into horror, which is my wheelhouse.
And not mine.
So what do you know about the movie Carrie?
I know a handful of things. It is based on a Stephen King story. I don't know if it's a full-on novel or one of his shorter novellas or short stories, but I know it's from Stephen King. I know this version, the original movie, was made in the late 70s or early 80s, and Sissy Spacek plays the titular character Carrie. I know part of the plot involves around a pubescent girl getting mocked for some reason, and there is a scene, and I don't know if this is the climax or not. I know that there is a very famous scene where she is ironically made prom queen or something like that, and then gets pig's blood dumped on her, which causes her to manifest psychic powers and fuck shit up.
To use the technical term.
But I don't, that's it.
Okay.
And that is all I know. And I don't know where the story is or what is particularly scary about any of that other than, ooh, women have powers. But that's all I know. So I know that there might be more, like, I don't know if that's the climax of the movie or the midpoint or what happens after she manifests her powers. I don't know what happens when she starts fucking shit up. So I don't know if she murders just her whole school or the whole town or just the bullies or nothing. I honestly, I don't know anything about any of it. So that is the extent of what I know about Carrie.
Well, so you know a few things, but I'm excited for you to watch the movie and learn some more about the context here.
I also believe that this was directed by Brian DePalma.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes. So, yes, this movie is based on a 1974 Stephen King novel. It was Stephen King's first novel, and it was his first novel to be adapted into a film.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay.
So, directed by Brian DePalma, it was released on November 3rd, 1976.
Okay.
So, mid-70s. It does star Sissy Spacek as Carrie White. It also stars Piper Laurie, who was returning to film after a 16-year sabbatical, I guess. She had not been in a movie in 16 years, and she came back to be in this movie.
I assume she's not a teenager otherwise, unless she played a baby.
No, she is not a teenager. She's Carrie's mother.
Okay.
Both Sissy Spacek and Piper Laurie were nominated for Oscars for their roles in this movie, which is very rare for horror. You don't see horror at the Oscars a lot. So
that is true.
I learned in researching the casting of this movie that, and I don't remember if this came up when we were recording our Star Wars episode, but apparently George Lucas and Brian DePalma did joint casting for Carrie and Star Wars.
No, I didn't know that, actually.
So several of the actresses that appear in Carrie auditioned for Princess Leia at this joint casting session.
Interesting.
So I'm not sure which of these other actresses you will know. Amy Irving, she is one of the actresses that auditioned for Princess Leia. She's also the singing voice of Jessica Rabbit in Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Interesting.
Nancy Allen, who went on to later marry Brian DePalma for several years. And PJ Souls, who was also in Halloween. So I know her from that, but also an auditioner for Princess Leia. Other people in the movie include William Catt, Betty Buckley, and John Travolta in his second film role.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Is he also in drag?
Unfortunately, no.
Oh.
But we'll see if that would have made the movie better if we imagine him in drag.
This would have been after Welcome Back, Kotter, though, right?
I don't know exactly when Welcome Back, Kotter was, but I think you're correct about that. So he had been in TV. I do remember when I was researching, he was a TV actor, but this was only his second role in film. So I mentioned that this was Stephen King's first novel. He actually gave up writing the novel after 3 pages.
Wait, this was his first novel or his first novel that was adapted?
It was both.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yep. It was his first published novel. He had been doing a lot of writing. I'm not sure if he had started writing any of his other novels at the point that Carrie was published, but it was his first published novel in 1974.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. And he did give up on writing it and threw it in the trash. And his wife, Tabitha, found it and convinced him to keep going, and also served as a sort of advisor on some of the subject matter because, as you did point out correctly, this is about the experience of a teenage girl. And I think his frustration with not being able to identify more with the character is why he thought this novel would not be successful. So Tabitha convinced him it was a worthwhile story to write. And she also offered, I think, some guidance on some of the things that he was less familiar with, not having ever been a teenage girl.
Right.
Some other movies that were released in November 1976, just for comparison: Sybil, which was a made-for-TV movie, but I feel like I've heard of that for a long time. It's sort of synonymous with what used to be called multiple personality disorder.
Right.
Network, which I've heard of, have never seen.
Really? You've never seen Network?
Mm-mm. And the last movie that I noted as coming out in November of that year is a little film called Rocky.
Oh, okay. You, as a Pennsylvania native, have a large Rocky Balboa tattoo on your lower back.
Yes, of course. We all do. It's mandated by law.
Right.
In the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, not a state, it's a Commonwealth.
Oh, I apologize. Have you seen Rocky?
I haven't actually.
That's funny. I've only seen the first one. I haven't seen any of the other 15 or however many there are.
It would be really funny if
I have seen Creed, which is technically part of the Rocky series. And I did see Creed 2, I think, because I was on an airplane and I was bored. But I haven't seen any of the other Rocky movies.
It would be funny if I had seen the sequels, but not the original.
Right.
But I haven't seen any of them. Carrie is a franchise. It was followed, the original movie was followed by a 1999 sequel called The Rage, Carrie 2. So 23 years after the original, there was a sequel.
Is that like a real sequel, though? Or is it one of those things where the studio had the rights to slap the name on something, so they just had some direct and they slapped Carrie 2 on it?
It's more the latter.
Okay.
There were also 2 additional adaptations of the novel. A 2002 made-for-TV movie, which is not really a remake, it's just a reimagining of the novel, and then a 2013 remake.
That was with a Fanning, right?
No, it was Chloe Grace Moretz.
Chloe Grace Moretz, who I confuse with one of the Fannings.
Yeah, so. They look kind of similar. They're blonde.
Okay. Did you ever see that one?
No.
Interesting. Mm-mm. I wonder if it's any good. No one ever talks about it, so probably
Julianne
not.
Moore is also in that movie. She plays Carrie's mother. So the Piper Laurie role from the original, which will mean more to you after we watch the movie. So just keep it in mind. I also learned there was a Broadway show in 1988 that was canceled after 16 previews and 5 performances. So I guess that shows us how good that play was. And there is an upcoming horror miniseries on Amazon Prime that is going to star, in addition to others, Amber Midthunder from Prey and Matthew Lillard, who I always love.
And Carrie?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. Do you have anything else come to mind that you might know about it? Anything else you want?
That's
all right.
Literally it. I'm very curious about because what I know about the movie isn't enough to fill a movie or a novel. So I really do wonder what else happens here.
Well, I am looking forward to watching it with you and then seeing what you think afterward. So let's do it.
Okay.
Red. I might have known it would be red.
It's paint, Mama. What Tommy gave me, Mama. Aren't they beautiful?
I can see your dirty pillows. Everyone will.
Breasts, Mama. They're called breasts. And every woman has them.
Take off that dress.
No.
We'll burn it together and pray for forgiveness.
No, Mama.
Well, he's not coming.
He is coming, Mama. Now stop it. I'm nervous enough.
No, he's not coming. He's not gonna come.
Go away. Stop it, Mama. Stop hurting yourself, Mama.
He's gonna laugh at you. They're all gonna laugh at you.
Laugh at
It's
me.
not too late. You can stay here with me.
I don't want to stay with you, Mama.
Look, I'll answer the door and I'll tell him that you're sick. I'll tell him that you changed your mind.
Sit down and be quiet.
Okay, so we have now watched Carrie.
Yes, we have.
What did you think?
It was depressing.
Yes.
It was sad.
Mm-hmm.
It was a very well executed movie. So it was technically very interesting. I really liked the way DePalma directed the movie. It seemed like here is a cautionary tale about how sex negativity ruins lives.
Very bold for 1976.
Mothers, talk to your children about sex and telekinesis.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure there's an American Girl doll book that you can get for little girls now that tells them about their telekinetic powers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Our bodies, ourselves, our ability to throw things across the room.
I'd read it.
There wasn't a lot more to the movie than what I
There
knew
was
about
not
it.
a lot more?
I didn't think so. I think ultimately it's a story about a poor, abused, sheltered girl who just happens to be telekinetic and things get out of control and then she murders everyone and herself.
Yeah.
And then there's one surviving traumatized girl who has to live with all of that for the rest of her life. And terrible 1970s psychology.
Yeah, oh my God, that final scene. Mental health was kind of a wasteland in the 70s.
Carrie is a terribly sympathetic character. As far as a character study goes, it's interesting to think about where everything went wrong and all of the little decisions that people made that led up to the final climax. I feel like the movie and the book, likely, not having read the book, have things to say about religious fervor, sex, and puberty. I don't know that it was entirely clear what it was trying to say as far as how all of these things are interrelated. I think it really walked the line between being subversive or actually lurid. Like there's times when it seems like the movie wants to have it both ways. Like it wants to be a little exploitative and a little bit titillating, but it also wants to make a point about what that says about people and society in general. And I don't know that it necessarily does that well. I'm glad I watched it. I think as far as horror movies go, it barely counts as a horror movie.
Well, horror
is really scary.
We've talked about this before, and I've thought and talked about this outside of the podcast many times, that horror is fluid. It is hard to pin down exactly what horror is. And a lot of movies fall under the horror umbrella that I think people would make arguments are not pure horror. And it's very hard to define.
I do feel like one of the chief elements of horror is for it to be scary.
You don't think that this might have scared people in the end?
I mean, the end, I wonder how much of that is from the book or how much of that is tacked on to the movie to make a cheap scare at the end. Because
the very last shot, you mean?
Yeah, the hand coming out of the grave. It feels...
That's tacked on. That's not in the book.
Okay, yeah, that's a little silly, and especially since it's a dream sequence and it's that character processing her trauma and her hand in all of this. Yeah, I mean, that was the only jump scare. The moral of the story is don't be mean to the weird homeschool kid, and maybe you won't get killed in a telekinetic gym fire.
Yeah, that is the moral of the story.
Or don't try to run her over either, which, well, that's a whole other... We'll get to that.
We will get to that. It's kind of a mixed bag of things happening in this movie because I think at the end of the day, Carrie is a tragedy.
Sure, yeah.
And there are things that were in the book that didn't make it into the movie. There were obviously differences, which I'll talk about some of those when we do the recap. But some of these ideas that you're mentioning were Stephen King's ideas. The book is far less lurid than the movie, partly by nature of being a book, although you can describe some.
Yeah, I'm like, if there were like long passages describing teenage Carrie rubbing her boobs in the shower, then that...
Not to my recollection. It's been a bit since I read the book, but I don't remember that being the case. This movie, I do not love the way that it frames some of these scenes of the girls. And in the research that I did, it seems like a discussion of this story through the lens of the male gaze is a conversation that people have had. Like, is it gratuitous? And I think it falls on the side of the line that, yes, it is. I don't love it.
Yeah.
So we have these themes. The religious themes were Stephen King's. The themes about an uncontrollable body after puberty, that's kind of part of the original idea of the story. But then some of these other themes that you mentioned, I think, are more DePalma. So it kind of gets a little bit, the lines are a little bit blurred in terms of where the ideas came in. This is the story of a teenage girl that was written by a man, and then the film adaptation was directed by a man.
Right.
So that just on its own, it's like, what are you bringing to this story? You don't know what this is like.
And I also assume the screenplay was written by a man.
Yes, it was.
I don't know.
The screenplay was written by Lawrence Cohen. So a man.
Right.
As I mentioned before, Tabitha King, Stephen King's wife, did have some input on the novel, but I don't know what kind of input from the female perspective they got for the movie.
You said you were excited about this, and I know that you liked this movie. I know you just said that you aren't fan. You aren't fan.
I am not fan.
You are not fan. You are not fan of the lurid nature of the sexualization of the characters in the movie. So what about the movie do you like, or what about it stands out?
I was mostly excited to just talk about a horror movie because I love horror. I do like Carrie as a movie. I don't think that lasciviousness is present in every scene. I really like Sissy Spacek's performance. I feel like we get a lot of shades of this character throughout the movie. I like Sue, who is played by Amy Irving. She's the one with the curly hair.
I was calling her poodle hair because I didn't catch her name in the script. So
I think she's an interesting character. I like Miss Collins, who is the teacher that is looking out for Carrie. I like...
She's the only teacher, right? Because, with 1970s hair and everyone kind of looking, it was hard to keep track of. So I was just calling her coach.
She's the only female teacher / coach. I think she's the gym teacher. And I like Piper Laurie's performance, even though I wouldn't say I like that character. She's terrifying. She's so over the top, but also very sinister.
She is very over the top. Her performance was a good performance. I feel like she's doing the crazy mom character. Her performance was good, but I also didn't think it was particularly interesting. It didn't stand out to me in any kind of way that like, oh, this is something I've never seen before. It just felt like, it felt like, oh yeah, I've seen this character before. She's crazy 1970s woman.
Yeah. No, that's fair. That's fair. I really like Tommy's character.
Yeah.
I think Tommy's interesting to talk about as well.
I want to and I don't know how much of this you want to get into now, but we might as well open this tin and eat from it. So I've been rewatching Justified.
Okay.
I was unclear about Tommy and Sue not being in on it.
Yeah, they were not.
Yeah. And it became very clear at the end, in the climax, when Sue is trying to stop the tragic events from unfolding and trying to save Carrie's face. So I was going to be really mad because Tommy actually did seem like a decent dude. And I was going to be really mad if it's like he was faking it the whole time, but he wasn't. And he was a tragic victim in all of it because, a lot of the other kids who weren't necessarily laughing at Carrie, it really did only seem like a couple of mean kids were laughing at Carrie. This movie is basically Mean Girls plus telekinesis.
Yeah.
But Tommy and Sue actually seemed decent. And so a lot of the tension for me watching was thinking that they were in on it. And especially the scene when they're talking to Coach. And there was the scene when Coach is telling Carrie that, maybe Tommy is being legit. And then she turns right around and she goes and talks to Tommy. And she's like, what are you doing?
I love that moment, honestly.
It was nice. It was a good reversal because I thought she was like just being super naive. And she was really just trying to help poor Carrie, who has serious emotional problems, which given her parentage is totally understandable. So that revelation was good when I finally realized that, okay, no, they weren't in the flock. Because, when you see people, especially when you see the group of mean kids from a distance, it's just a flock of curly hair.
Yeah.
So it was a little hard for me to understand that Sue and Tommy weren't in on the plot against Carrie from the beginning. So when I finally did have that realization, and I don't know if I was supposed to have that kind of tension and wonder what they were up to, and then realize when it was too late that they actually had been nice and they actually were trying to be nice to Carrie or
I'm not 100% sure. And part of that is because I've seen this movie many times. I've read the book several times. And my first experience with both was a long time ago. So I've known that they're not in on it. I think that there are some clues earlier on in the movie that we are supposed to trust them. Like even in the very first, well, not the very first scene, but the scene in the locker room when the girls are they're just
pelting Carrie with tampons.
Yeah. And
that was a lot of tampons.
It was.
Pretty
well,
much.
They opened up the machine.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So they had access to all of them. But when Miss Collins, aka Coach, comes in, she specifically is like, Sue, what are you doing? Like, she doesn't say that to any of the others. So we're supposed to be like, okay, so this is out of character, for Sue. And then the first scene where we meet Tommy in English class, when the teacher is mocking Carrie, which that teacher was a dick.
Right.
But Tommy's like, you suck. So we're supposed to think like these are good, decent kids.
Oh, I thought he was saying that about Carrie.
No, I've always interpreted it as he's saying that about the teacher because
that makes a little bit more sense. I thought he was like a reluctant bully because one of the things in this movie, the girls are mean, mainly
Chris.
Chris
is the main bully.
Chris in baseball cap.
Yeah, that's Norma.
Chris in baseball cap. Chris, who I was also referring to as Lewis because that's her character's name from RoboCop.
Okay.
So Lewis and baseball cap were just absolutely mean, and it felt like all of the other guys were coming along mostly reluctantly.
The male characters?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Billy is John Travolta's character.
Yeah.
Billy's friends seem like they are gung-ho to do
mess
mischief
with Carrie, yeah.
and mess with Carrie. I think Tommy's friends, so we meet two of Tommy's friends, the ones that he goes tux shopping with.
Oh, yeah.
Which is a fun scene. It's really inconsequential, but I like their friendship. And then at the dance, one of those friends, the shorter one, he and his date are nice to Carrie. And even when the pig's blood scene happens, we see George shaking his head in disgust at this incident.
See,
But then Carrie sees him and he's laughing. So we're getting skewed perspectives as well.
It's interesting that you mentioned this because I was primed, and maybe part of this also has to do with when I was a kid I was bullied. And was surprising. Somebody with a podcast was bullied as a child. So I have that tension of when people are all of a sudden nice to you and they haven't been nice to you before, there's this inherent not trusting it. And I think part of that was I was primed to think that everyone was in on it and everyone was bullying Carrie and that they were all being fake about it. And as I said, I didn't realize that Tommy and Sue were actually, Tommy and Poodle Hair were actually...
Tommy also has poodle hair.
That is true, but
They're
I remember
the poodle
Tommy.
hairs.
They were actually being genuine and sincere this whole time. So that realization didn't come until later. So I was applying that to everyone. I assumed that basically every character who wasn't Carrie was out to get Carrie, except for the teacher, except for Coach. So it would be interesting to rewatch. But I wonder how much of that is intentional, like how much of that is filmmaker intent to try and make you think, because there are some very clever cuts where you have conversations like Sue talking to Tommy and saying, I want you to ask out Carrie to the prom, but then it cuts away. And it's also that conversation is happening at the exact same time that Chris and Billy are having their conversation. And so you think that it's a conspiracy and they're working together, and they also cut away so you don't hear the full motivation. You don't hear them saying, you know, I think she needs a break. I think it would be nice or anything like that. So the movie definitely leaves space for you to have that interpretation that everyone's in on it. And yeah, it'd be really interesting to watch again now, knowing that not all of the kids were monsters. It was really just a handful of terrible kids being terrible. And that makes the ending even more tragic.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say, is that it's really interesting to hear your thoughts on this, because again, I've known for so long. I mean, I think the first time I watched this movie, I was in high school. So it's been 20 plus years. So knowing that Tommy and Sue are not in on it, that really informs my sense of this is so sad, because Carrie is very sympathetic. And then even when she snaps, it's understandable. But when you know that a lot of these kids are actually trying to be decent people and to accept her and to be nice to her, they don't deserve to die. And so it's all really only Chris, Billy, and their friend. I mean, not that I really think, baseball hat. But even then, I'm like, do kids really deserve to die? Probably not. But But they're the villains, and the other kids are kind of just caught in the crossfire. Yeah, literal crossfire. Yeah, truly. Yeah, ultimately, I mean, I would say I liked the movie. I was entertained. We watched Citizen Kane, and there's a lot of parallels there with Citizen Kane. Not only, apparently, Brian De Palma loved Orson Welles and loved Citizen Kane as a film, and you can tell because in the shots, there's a lot of things like split diopter shots and deep focus shots where you have one character sitting way back and one character way up front. There's quite a few of those in Carrie. And that's very much borrowed from Citizen Kane, but it's the same sort of situation in that it's a movie that clearly has permeated pop culture, and I knew a lot about it going into it, but I was still entertained because it's still a very well told story for the most part. Yeah. Were you surprised that the telekinesis is introduced earlier in the movie? Because I got the impression that you thought that the telekinesis did not kick in until the pig's blood scene. No, I think I knew that she was going to be experiencing those powers. I also think that it would be hard to explain away that, like, if she starts wrecking shit. Yeah. And she hadn't already had those powers before. So it makes sense. I mean, it's a little on the nose. Like, I've hit puberty and now I have mystical powers. So it's interesting because one of the things that is slightly different in the book, you do learn that she displayed some of these powers as a child. Oh, okay. And then they were sort of suppressed, and it's after, it is still after she gets her first period that they start to manifest again, but she did do certain things when she was a small child. So that changes it a little bit. I mean, that still carries the metaphor about
sexuality and discovering sexuality, because a lot of people have that experience where there's some kind of sexual awakening, but it's too early. It's prepubescent. You don't really know what's going on. And then you are told to repress it because of religious or whatever other reasons. And then it comes back with a vengeance.
It's really interesting that you're pointing that out specifically, because I do remember there may be more than one example of her powers as a child, but the one that comes to mind specifically is that Carrie, young, I think she's 3, she sees her neighbor sunbathing, either topless or in a skimpy bikini, and she's fascinated, and Margaret catches her and abuses her, and she causes it to hail, essentially.
Interesting.
So it is really a moment of sexual awakening. Like, what are those? My religious mother comes and yells at me for being interested. I'm going to cause hail.
I like that you see, what are those? Like she saw a nice pair of shoes. What are those?
They're dirty pillows.
But ultimately, I like the movie. I would watch. And as I said, I would want to watch it again in knowing the context now, and see if the movie was being more intentional in trying to keep me tense about who is being mean to this poor girl. Or if it was really just my own assumptions and my own coloring of how it works.
Yeah, I would be very interested to hear your thoughts if you/we watch it again. So I have to say, my very first note is from before the movie even started. It was the content warning. You said, ooh, nudity. You were not expecting nudity. And then there was so much nudity, like right away.
I wrote down, ooh, nudity and flashing lights.
What else do you need in a film?
Right.
So then we open on high school gym class. We meet Carrie and we see she's awkward. She's ostracized by her peers.
She is terrible at volleyball.
She's terrible
to be perfectly
at volleyball.
Honest, I would be mad at her too, because she was
I don't like
really
that
bad.
Because I would be even worse than her at volleyball. I would run away from the ball.
They were talking about, we'll never be able to win a game. Like, it wasn't that she was in gym class and they were just playing volleyball for the day.
No, I
like,
thought they were in gym class.
Like, they were a team, apparently.
Oh, I still interpreted it as they were in gym class.
There was a throwaway line where one of the girls says something like, now we'll never be able to win a game with her, or something like that.
Yeah, but if you're playing in gym class, it's still a game anyway. Agree to disagree. I think it was just gym class. Because if it was a game, it wouldn't be in the middle of the school day. They just go home to shower.
I thought they were practicing.
Well, whatever.
Either way,
Carrie sucks at volleyball.
Carrie does suck at volleyball.
Then we cut to the locker room.
It is a slow motion shot of a teenage girl locker room, which is certainly a choice.
Full nudity and lots of bush.
Lots of 70s bush.
Lots and lots of 70s bush. I will say that at least the main actresses were all adults in this movie. So Sissy Spacek was 26 when Carrie was released.
Really? Okay.
Nancy Allen and PJ Souls, who plays baseball hat Norma, were 25, and Amy Irving was 23. So I hope that all the other nude teenage girls that we see in this opening shot were also adults.
Right.
And I hope that helps you to not feel so awkward about this.
But just the idea.
They're supposed to be teenagers.
Yeah, the idea is they're supposed to be teenagers. It's hard to tell because in the 1970s, every teenager looked like they had a mortgage and a pension.
True.
So it goes back to, as I was saying, how is the movie trying to make me feel about this? What is the movie trying to say by having a slow motion shot going through a girl's locker room? Are we supposed to feel titillated? Titillated? Yeah. Are we supposed to feel uncomfortable? And when you have it in the context of 1976, it becomes a lot more confusing. Like, I really don't know what filmmaker intent was. Yeah. All I know is in a modern lens, this wouldn't fly.
No, I was very uncomfortable. I will say that. And it goes on for so long. I think the nudity is gratuitous. And I also do not like the score. I think the score is doing a lot to make this feel like a porn.
That's interesting. I hadn't made note of it, but it really was kind of flowery and sensual, wasn't it?
It really was. I have issues with the music throughout the movie because I feel like a lot of it does not match what I am feeling, at least. I don't know if I'm not feeling what they wanted me to feel, but it's incongruous.
I mean, a lot of it, if we're talking about the score, felt like it was just straight up lifting Bernard Herrmann's Psycho score, especially anytime she used her powers. It's like, oh, we're just doing Psycho,
Absolutely.
huh? You mentioned the nudity. The nudity is mostly incidental. It wasn't uncomfortable until it got to Carrie.
Yeah.
And then it became super uncomfortable because all we know of Carrie at this point is that she sucks at volleyball and everyone hates her for it. And then the next thing we see of her, it is a very long shot of her just feeling herself up in the shower.
Yep. She's soaping her breasts. She's really lingering on her legs.
Yeah, really, real close up of her thighs.
Which I think is then supposed to be because that's where we first see the blood. So we're looking at her legs and then she's bleeding.
So we're tying, it's that whole thing about tying sexuality and pubescence in a very stereotypical way. And I wonder if the idea was that, and you might be able to fill this in from the book, is she having sexual thoughts and that triggers her period? I know that's not how periods work, but like if she was
Bad women's anatomy.
Right. If she was having sexual thoughts and then her period came and it got her to freak out, or
I don't remember if she's having any kind of specific thoughts that we're getting insight into in the book, honestly.
It's not explicit, but the movie doesn't, I'm trying to think of the best way to say it. She's not masturbating.
Yeah.
So, you know,
it's very sensual.
It is. It's very sensual. And it's it's certainly a choice, but it does have to do with the themes of the movie. And the themes of the movie are about sexuality and control and about, you know, power as a woman and what it means to be a young woman. Like, that's clearly part of the theme of the movie, but is Brian DePalma using that as an excuse to show a close-up of Sissy Spacek rubbing her thighs for 5 minutes?
Yeah. Well, Carrie freaks out about this blood because
she apparently does not know. The principal has a line later. He's like, isn't she a little old to be having her first period? Which is, if she's supposed to be...
She's 16.
She's supposed to be 16. Okay. Which that also makes the close-ups on her rubbing her boobs and everything.
Again, Sissy Spacek was 26 or 20, at least 25 filming the movie, but the character is 16.
Yeah, that's...
Yeah.
Definitely an eyebrow-raising choice there, Mr. DePalma.
16 does feel old for a first period, but I'm saying that in 2025, and girls do get their periods earlier.
Right, because of all the microplastics and hormones and shit. So.
Yeah, so I don't know how unusual that was in 1976, but it seems to be unusual to the other girls because they're like, it's just your period, calm down.
I was thinking they were all seniors because, well, frankly, we were seeing them all naked. So I was thinking they were all 17, 18, supposed to be 17 or 18.
Now that you say that, they do talk about senior prom.
Yeah.
That it's their senior prom. Well, 16 or older. And that is on the late side. And she does not know what it is. So she freaks out.
She is freaking the fuck out.
If you've literally never heard of this before and suddenly you're bleeding from a place that she's probably already kind of scared of because of her mother.
Yeah, fair enough.
It would freak you out.
Yeah, I would probably be freaking out. But she is just covered in her own period blood.
And she's grabbing
people.
Naked,
saying, help me, help me.
Yeah. It's real. I mean, it's cringy. And
it's not a typical reaction, I would think.
I've never seen anyone react that way. It is hard to watch as someone who has had a first period because it feels like an extreme reaction and she's grabbing people and it's very uncomfortable to watch. And it's jarring that it goes from these lingering sensual shots of her to the camera is kind of over her and she just looks like kind of a creature.
Yeah.
She's not speaking at first. She's just sort of grunting as she rushes at people with her bloody fingers. And it's really strange.
Sissy Spacek was a really good casting choice because she is what is needed of her at any given moment.
Yes.
She can be a very pretty girl. She can be a very normal looking and smile and glow when things are going well. And she can look like this otherworldly horror creature when she's got fake blood on her or is in a weird position and she's got those very huge expressive eyes.
Yeah.
And that definitely plays in the scene. A direction that I thought this might be going, and it turned out it wasn't. I thought the reason she was saying, help me, wasn't necessarily because she didn't know what her period was. I thought there might be something like she knew that in her family, they get weird, witchy telekinetic powers when they get their period. And she was worried that her weird, witchy telekinetic powers were going to start to manifest. And that's why she was freaking out. It's clearly not the direction that things were going, but just
That is interesting.
Given the context of how stories like this have gone post Carrie, I thought that might be where this was going, but it wasn't.
I'm glad that you said that Sissy Spacek was a good choice for this because she really wanted this role. There was another actress that was Brian DePalma's first choice. I can't remember what that actress's name was now, but Sissy Spacek showed up to the audition. She put Vaseline in her hair. She didn't have on any makeup and she wore like an old sailor dress that her mom had made for her and like cut off that. So she was really trying to present this awkward,
homeschooled kid,
unkempt. Yeah. And I also think that she does do a good job of being a chameleon and portraying Carrie in a few different ways. But throughout it all, she has that vulnerability. And she's really, even though she was an adult playing a child, she does come across as very vulnerable.
Very vulnerable, very naive. Also has an unusually small butt crack.
That's really important to the story. So I'm glad that you brought it up. Thank you.
She has a very, very small butt crack.
I didn't notice. That's what I'm going to pay attention to if we rewatch the movie. Going to look at her butt crack.
It's so small.
Anyway, the light explodes, as you mentioned. So that's our first sign that something is a little amiss here. We cut to Miss Collins, the coach, whose name is Miss Desjardins in the book and in some of the other adaptations. Of course, there's a lot of French names in Maine. So you see that a lot in Stephen King novels. But I guess they thought that that was kind of a mouthful of a name to saddle her with for this movie.
The movie doesn't really pay any mind to Maine, it seems. There's not really, they sort of leave it in a generic Anytown, USA.
Yep. In the book, it is Chamberlain, Maine, is the town that they live in.
Is it going to turn out that like Carrie's dad is Randall Flagg or some shit like that?
Man, I wish. That'd be amazing. So Miss Collins is briefing the principal on what happened. They are going to bring Carrie in and let her go home for the rest of the day. And the principal cannot remember her name.
So bad. He does not give a shit.
Or that. He doesn't care.
He really does not care.
He keeps calling her Cassie, and Miss Collins corrects him twice.
Oh, to be a public school administrator in the 1970s.
Carrie also corrects him twice, and the second time, she is so mad that the ashtray on his desk goes flying.
And they are just like, whatever.
Yeah, it happens all the time.
Right. Weird.
Well, how do you explain it? I mean, you don't, if that happened, you'd think, I don't know, maybe he kicked the desk or something.
Yeah.
You just explain away paranormal activity. So Carrie goes home. A kid is harassing her on a bike. She's leaving school early, so why is this kid out?
Who knows? But
he's calling her creepy Carrie. She turns to glare at him and he goes flying off his bike. He seems to be like, what did she just do? But this is the first time that someone is actually connecting something strange happening to Carrie herself.
Yeah. the smarmy little kid, which how does he even know who Carrie is? Like, she's older than him. So, like, is she just known for being, I guess.
Yeah, the whites are pretty notorious. And I don't know if that's Carrie specifically as much as it is Margaret, because we are about to meet Margaret and she goes door to door proselytizing.
Yeah, getting bribed to leave.
Yes. She's also kind of vampire-like because it's like she has to be invited in. She goes to Sue Snell's house. Sue is Poodle Hair, as you called her. Mm-hmm. And Sue's mom is like, oh, hi. And then she invites her in and she's like, oh, thank you.
Sue's mom was really into a soap opera, and it was really important that a guy named Bill had previously lived in Chicago.
Yeah.
And I wanted to know at this point, I'm like, why was it so important that Bill used to live in Chicago?
You know, we could probably figure out what she was watching and why it was important that Bill used to live in Chicago. Mrs. Snell is played by Priscilla Pointer, who is Amy Irving's real life mother.
Oh.
So Amy Irving is Sue, and that is her real mom.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. So she does bribe Margaret to go away, and then Sue shows up and is like, what was she doing here? And I think she might be worried because of what had just happened in school that day, and maybe it was about their incident.
The girls pelting Carrie with tampons.
Yeah. But it was not about that, because Margaret does not find out until later when the school calls her to let her know what happened. And she's super cool about it. She's like, Carrie, let me reassure you. Nope. She tells her it's because she sinned. She has sinful thoughts. You don't get your period if you're not sinful.
Which does play into what I was saying with the movie correlating those things, correlating sexuality and pubescence and getting your first period. But,
well, and that is biblical.
Kind of. When she's like, the first sin was intercourse, I was like, no, it isn't.
Well, it wasn't, but
first sin was
there not
apple eating.
It was apple eating, yes. Oh. Apple picking, actually.
And lying about it. But yeah, intercourse was not the first sin. So that's definitely a lens of, it's viewing Christianity through a very hyper-Puritan American.
But there is, and I'm going to shame myself with my lack of Bible knowledge and my forgetfulness about what happens in the Bible.
Your 12 years of Catholic school.
Yeah. But Eve's sin is correlated with her getting...
Eve's punishment is. Eve's punishment for Eve talked Adam into getting the apple and lying about it. So God is especially harsh on women and says, all right, because of that, you're going to get periods and childbirth's going to suck.
Yeah.
So deal with that.
So there is something there with woman's sin leads to menstruation, even if Margaret's a little bit fuzzy on the details.
It is very much a sex negative, puritanical view of religion, and it is not healthy.
No, it is not.
So she makes Carrie go in her closet with creepy glowing eye Jesus.
Yes. Very scary Jesus. He's pierced in several places. That's
aside from the weird foreshadowing, is that a Catholic imagery? Because I don't know of a Jesus that is shot with a bunch of arrows. That does not seem to be a very traditional.
So actually, this is a statue of Saint Sebastian.
Oh, okay. That makes a little more sense.
Who apparently was pierced in that way.
He's the patron saint of keeping your legs closed? What is he?
Athletes, soldiers, archers, and police officers, as well as a protector against epidemics and a saint of a holy death.
I see. So not creepy Jesus, creepy Saint Sebastian.
Yeah, and it is very creepy with the glowing eyes. But yes, Carrie is forced to go in there and pray. She's screaming when she goes in, but then later we see Margaret just quietly sewing and Carrie comes out of her closet.
Yeah, Carrie could have just come out whenever. And I was like, oh, okay. There wasn't like did she have an egg timer in there, or she was just supposed to come out when she felt more at peace with her sin? I don't know.
It's a little unclear, but what is so sad is that she comes out and she says, thank you, Mama.
Yeah, it's very, very religious abuse.
Yeah.
And it's very sad.
So Margaret sends her to bed. Carrie is staring at herself in her mirror and I guess remembering what happened that day and just the girls at school or not knowing what her period was, the religious abuse, and the mirror shatters. Margaret hears it and comes upstairs to check on her, and Carrie has pieced the mirror back together, presumably also telekinetically. And Margaret's kind of just like suspicious, but she's just like, go to sleep. And that's kind of it for that scene. The next day at school, we meet Tommy in English class. The teacher is reading his poem.
This teacher's trying to fuck Tommy.
He really is. This teacher is so weird because he's like into Tommy.
He's like way into Tommy.
And then he asks for criticism of the poem, and Carrie dreamily murmurs, "It's beautiful." And he starts mocking her. And that's when Tommy says, "You suck," which I interpreted as directed at the teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And the teacher's like, "What'd you say?" I said, "Aw, shucks."
Yeah, I was under the impression that everybody hated Carrie. So I thought he was saying "you suck" about Carrie just because he was being mean. But I think you're right. I think it does make more sense that he was saying it about the teacher.
Because Tommy's a nice guy.
Because Tommy ultimately is a nice guy.
I think Tommy and Sue are just so interesting because they are clearly both popular and they probably do both struggle with peer pressure. I mean, we saw Sue giving in to the peer pressure and participating in throwing the tampons at Carrie.
The tampon assault.
And then later, when Miss Collins confronts Tommy and Sue about inviting Carrie to the prom, Sue says, "We don't care what we look like, do we?" And Tommy just is kind of like, he laughs, but it's like, well, yeah, actually, I do kind of care.
Yeah.
But they're still both decent kids at the end of the day.
I mean, they're supposed to be, they're teenagers.
Yeah. I mean, teenagers are not known for being just great people in general.
But yeah, this teacher is very much trying to get in Tommy's pants.
Yeah. So we do not like him. At least
No.
I don't. Then we find out what the punishment is going to be for the locker room prank. Miss
Right.
Collins says she wanted the girls to get suspended and not allowed to go to the prom, but she was overruled and they're going to get a week of detention doing athlete stuff, gym stuff. And if they don't come to detention, they're going to get suspended and not allowed to go to the prom. Chris, the main bully, wants to push back and refuse to do the detention. And she thinks if they all do it together, they have a chance. But the other girls are like, no, we won't go to prom. Mm-hmm. So they're like, we're just going to do it. And I believe this is when Sue tells Chris to just shut up.
Sue is tired of Chris's shit.
Yeah, aren't we all?
So Chris storms off to go get RoboCop.
Yes, apparently. I don't know. I haven't seen RoboCop. The detention scene is another scene where I question the music choices because it's so zany.
It's interesting because there's a lot of close-ups and interesting shots of their bodies. And the camera follows Coach. It starts at the top and they're panning shots. And then it kind of goes down and follows more or less a different part of Coach's body while the girls are doing exercises. It was really walking that line between exploitative and what are you trying to say here?
I think this scene really informs the locker room scene because you mentioned that the nudity of all of the girls except for Carrie is incidental. People are naked in locker rooms, so we're just panning through the locker room and they happen to be naked. But then we have this weird, gratuitous, sensual panning of Carrie's body. But it's like, is that intentional because of what's about to happen? But then later we have these shots of the girls' bodies and Miss Collins' bodies. And why? What is there's no reason for that.
It's like, am I not smart enough to get it? Or are you just being horny, Mr. DePalma?
I tend to think it's the latter, but be curious to know what other people think of this scene.
Me too.
Eventually, Chris is like, I'm out. And so Miss Collins is like, all right, well, you can't go to prom then. In the detention scene, we learn that Chris's date is someone named Billy Nolan, who we are yet to meet. And we also find out that Tommy is Sue's date/boyfriend. So then we see Sue approach Tommy and tell him that she wants to ask him a favor and that she wants him to invite Carrie White to the prom. And he's like, why? And then it cuts away.
Were they a couple? It's kind of unclear, especially because of the way Tommy starts acting towards Carrie at
It's
prom.
hard to tell.
So
I'm
they
not
could
sure.
just be good friends.
Yeah.
It's hard to tell, but I thought, given the tropes and everything else, I thought that they were a couple and this was her being in on it and conspiring with.
Yeah, they might just be prom dates. I'm not 100% sure. Even with the context that you're giving of he does get flirty and he kisses Carrie. So I don't know. It's not 100% clear, but we do at least know that they're going to the prom together. So then it cuts to Chris in the car with her date/boyfriend, Billy Nolan, played by John Travolta.
Well, before this scene, do you have the scene where Carrie is in the library and looking up books about her telekinetic powers?
Yes.
And my note was, Carrie isn't just sheltered, she is also a terrible reader.
Yes, she's reading so slowly. We're panning the lines in the book about telekinesis and she's reading them aloud.
Like a third grader.
It's so painful. Poor Carrie. Then after that, we cut to Chris and Billy in the car.
Mm-hmm.
Their relationship is so unhealthy. They are so mean to each other.
Yeah.
It's honestly kind of hard to even understand what is happening in that scene because they're just insulting each other. But then it's like, no, we like each other. They're just terrible. And they get to a party and Billy is about to get out of the car, but Chris is like, no, I want to talk to you about something. And then she asks him,
get out of the car, Danny Zuko.
Yeah, but he doesn't. And she says that she wants to ask him a favor. And then she's leaning over his lap.
She starts
We hear an unzipping sound.
Yeah, so it's very clear that she's giving him a blowjob.
But she is so clearly saying, Billy, Billy, Billy.
She's having a it's basically just a ventriloquist blowjob.
It's so weird. It's like she's just breathing on it as she says his name over and over again.
I wonder if part of that was in an effort to avoid maybe an X rating.
Yeah.
They added that to
because she cannot possibly be
the MPAA
giving oral sex and saying Billy as clearly as she is. Because there's no break in it. She's
Chris is a talented ventriloquist.
I guess so, but she's saying his name over and over again. There's no space for her to be putting anything in her mouth.
But I did not have RoboCop's partner giving Vincent Vega a blowjob on my bingo card. I was surprised that the movie took that turn.
Yeah. But Billy is also getting all hot and bothered from whatever is happening down there in his lap. And then she says, I hate Carrie White. And he's like, who? And then it cuts away. It's such a weird scene.
If we're talking about the movie's theme of sexuality and sin and everything else, when we talk about original sin, we mentioned that was Eve talking Adam into stealing the apple and lying about it. And this movie is the girls talking the boys into doing things that they wouldn't necessarily want to do.
That's an excellent point. Yeah, those temptresses.
Mm-hmm.
So we see Tommy ask Carrie to the prom, and Carrie may be naive, but she is no dummy, and she runs away because she assumes that it is a mean-spirited
She runs
prank.
away like Deb in Napoleon Dynamite.
Yes.
It is. She just sprints.
Miss Collins sees Carrie moping and asks her what's wrong. Carrie tells her that Tommy invited her to the prom, and Miss Collins is very supportive and enthusiastic about that, but Carrie says she doesn't believe it's true.
Yeah.
So Miss Collins tells her she just needs a little bit of makeup and then she'd be pretty.
Right.
But she's being really nice. I like Miss Collins.
Yeah. No, I mean, she's as supportive as a character could be in 1976.
Yeah. I mean, because we've actually seen her slap students twice that we didn't mention, and she's a little touchy-feely with Carrie. She's like brushing her hair off her face and but she's an ally, so we like her. Yeah. But I'm like, this would not really go over as well in 2025 as it seemed to. But as I said before, I really like that the very next scene, we see Miss Collins talking to Sue and Tommy and being like, what are you two up to? Yeah. Because this is obviously not genuine.
Right. And that was good. It made me go back because I had a note about the coach being too naive and trusting. And then I was like, oh no, she was just being super nice and trying to spare Carrie's feelings.
Yeah, no, I thought that was great that she's like, she was able to support Carrie, but then also be like, I'm going to get to the bottom of this because Carrie is probably right.
She tells Sue that you can't go to prom without a date. And I thought that, I guess, prom in the 1970s has the same rules as bank accounts in the 1970s.
Yeah.
If you don't have a man, you can't have one.
Women be not having rights. Tommy says that Carrie said no anyway, and Sue was like, well, you're going to talk her into it. Like, you're not going to take no for an answer, which is somewhat problematic, but her heart's in the right place, as we find out. So Tommy goes to Carrie's house, which is a risky move on his part, and he's trying to convince Carrie. She's still saying no, and she's like, why do you want to take me? And he says, because you liked my poem, which convinces her. So she reluctantly says, okay, fine. And then she closes the door in his face.
I did think that Tommy was being a shitheel at this point. So I was like, why are you trying so hard, man? You don't even really want to do this.
Yeah, but he's a good guy.
He is a good guy, ultimately.
So then we see Billy, Chris, and Billy's friends at the pig farm.
Mm-hmm.
This is a scene I do not usually like to watch because they're just about to commit some animal abuse, and it makes me sad.
I mean, it's
I
a
know
pig
that the
farm.
pigs
They're
are going to get killed anyway.
But they're going to get killed they're not going to get killed by a sledgehammer.
No. And Chris is into it. Like, this girl is aroused by violence and abuse.
Yeah.
She is not right, which Billy said to her in the car. And I'm like, you know what, Billy? You're correct.
Yeah.
Chris is messed up.
Billy may be staying alive, but those pigs aren't.
Oh, that's in poor taste. But it's funny. So they kill a pig. We see them plotting. They rope Norma in on the plotting. And we find out that there's going to be some scheming afoot.
Yeah, the one guy, it's a Hat Girl's boyfriend, I guess. He's so half-assing his part in this conspiracy. He's just like, I thought I could come collect the votes, maybe. And the guy in charge is like, well, I don't know. All right, be here at 6:30. And he's like, no, I'm not going to do that.
I'm going to be here at 8. Does 8 work? It works for me. And then the guy's like, yeah, I guess that's fine. I'm like, dude, come on. Carrie tells Margaret she's been invited to the prom. Margaret says, prom. And then there's a loud clap of thunder. It's so ominous.
Yeah.
She tells her she can't go, but Carrie's like, no, I'm going.
Is this the scene that's during the blackout question mark?
Well, it's not, I don't know that it's actually a blackout, although it might be because it is storming, but they may just have candles lit because Margaret is a weirdo.
Yeah.
And then it gets very dark because Margaret throws a drink in Carrie's face and it extinguishes the candles on the table.
After the candles go out, I really liked when the lightning goes off is when you see the big tapestry, the big religious tapestry on the wall behind them.
It's the Last Supper, right?
And you don't, I didn't get a good look at it. I think it is. It's if it's not the Last Supper, it's religious iconography. Yeah. But you don't see it. It's in shadow until the lightning strikes, and then you really see it and it comes into view. And I really liked that it was looming over them in the darkness. Yeah. It was very good. If nothing else, the movie is incredibly visually interesting.
Yes. I think this is when we first see Carrie demonstrate her powers deliberately to Margaret. And Margaret calls her a witch. And Carrie's basically like, things are going to change around here now because I'm telekinetic, bitch. That's the subtext. But she says she's researched it. There are other people. It's not Satan, because Margaret's basically saying that these powers are evil. And Carrie's like, no, this is something other people can do. And now I'm going to use them.
Yeah, the
dynamic has shifted here.
Margaret is blaming herself because of Carrie's parentage.
Yeah. We don't find that out until later, but that is what's happening, is that she thinks that because of the way that Carrie was conceived, she's got the devil in her. And that's what's giving her these powers. But Carrie's like, I'm just going to use them to go to prom. So prom night comes, and as before, Margaret is handling it well. She is walking around. She's injuring herself. She's beside herself. And she tries to tell Carrie that Tommy's not going to come. She sees Carrie's dress. She says, of course it would be red. It is the lightest pink I have ever seen, which I guess...
The movie didn't go in this direction. I thought the idea was that she had some sort of clairvoyance or like fortune telling.
That's a really good theory. I never thought of that before. So she's seeing it later when it's covered in blood.
Red, and that's why she is saying she's having these future visions.
Maybe.
Which, you know, if her family has some sort of genetic
Predisposition
to these mutant powers, that might make a little bit of sense.
Yeah, I don't remember if there's anything hinting at that in the book. It's possible. But if not, that is a really good theory, actually. I like that a lot. But she is very disturbed that you can see Carrie's breasts.
Carrie has a little bit of cleavage showing, and she says,
nipples.
I can see
you can see her nipples, too, which I think is probably compounding Margaret's terror.
I can see your dirty thoughts.
But she does call them dirty pillows, though. And Carrie says, they're called breasts, Mama, and every woman's got them.
I thought she said, I can see your dirty thoughts.
I think she does at some point say that, but she calls them dirty pillows. That is a classic line from this movie. And as is, they're all going to laugh at you. Had you heard that before?
No.
I think that may have been parodied in things, but she says that in her very shrill voice.
Which
of course, it comes back later.
Which also lent to me the idea that she had some sort of foresight or some kind of foreknowledge about what was going to happen.
ESP.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if it's that or if it's just that she is just a really bad mom. But Tommy does show up. He's very nice to her. They go to the prom.
They get at the prom and Carrie doesn't want to go in at first. And I wrote down, no girls ever want to get out of a car in this movie.
Yeah, that is true. It happened twice. At least twice. But she's just nervous. And he's like, sure. And then they just sit there and he clearly feels a little awkward about it. But then he's like, are you scared? And she says, yes. And he's so lovely to her. And I was noticing that so much because I do know that Tommy is blameless in the prank. And so to see how sweet and kind he's being to her, it's so sad.
Yeah, I was on edge because I was like, is he being this nice? And it's all a ruse to set Carrie up, but no, it wasn't. It was genuine.
Yeah. I don't know it because he does tell her later that she's beautiful. He gives her a kiss on the stage after they win. I don't know if he's actually interested in her or if he's just being really nice and trying to give her this wonderful prom experience. But either way, it is really sad when you know what's going to happen. They meet up with Tommy's friends, and his friend's date is also really nice to Carrie. She tells her, I love your dress. Where did you get it? Carrie says she's nervous. She's like, don't worry, you can sit with us. I love that girl. We did skip over the scene where Tommy and his friends go tuck shopping, which is so fun and has that weird fast forward moment.
Yeah, there's a moment where they're tuck shopping and then all of a sudden, just in the middle of the conversation, it just fast forwards and speed ramps up and makes the guy talking sound like a chipmunk. And it's the one time it does it in this
entire
whole movie.
I don't think it's a glitch. So that scene felt ad-libbed to me. And it felt like those guys were just kind of riffing. And it's really charming. And they have a lot of chemistry as friends. And so I thought maybe it was that they shot the scene and it was supposed to just be like they're buying Tux's scene, but then it turned out so well that Brian DePalma wanted to include it, but it was too long. So he just, I don't know. I don't know.
Cut it. It's strange because there are jump cuts in that scene when they jump and they each jumps to their when they change. There's a jump cut. So there are several jump cuts. So there's not any reason they could have done a jump cut in the middle of the conversation. Yeah. It would have worked fine. It's just a weird choice. Maybe it was
a glitch. I don't know. I didn't see anything about it. Oh, it was deliberate?
Part of the movie.
Okay.
Yeah, it's definitely part of the movie. It's just weird.
Yeah, it is weird. But I think they're fun as friends. I like that scene. And then we see George is the shorter friend
He's so short.
He's very short. And that is it's him and his date that are hanging out with them at the prom. And we just get some general prom stuff. We see everybody. Miss Collins is there as a chaperone. She comes over to tell Carrie that she looks beautiful. And then we find out
Hat Girl comes over and makes fun of Carrie because she made her dress. Which, first of all, Carrie's dress looks great. Carrie is apparently a very talented seamstress. Teamstress.
Yeah.
But I'm like, bitch, who are you to make fun of her? You're wearing a baseball cap to prom.
Yeah.
What is wrong with you? Like, her entire character is,
she is that type of person.
And I have a baseball hat.
Yeah. So she is that type of character. And I can't think of any other specific examples, but I've seen this before in movies with mean girl plot lines. She is the right-hand woman of the main bully. And she cannot read the room when the other people are like, oh, actually, this person person is not so bad. Maybe we've been too mean. Maybe we should give her a chance. Like everybody else kind of seems to be doing that with Carrie a little bit. And Norma just is like, no, I'm the bully's best friend. So I have to continue to be a bully even when other people are like actually being nice. We find out that Tommy and Carrie are on the list of nominees for prom king and queen. And Carrie is nervous about this, but then Tommy convinces her that it is a once in a lifetime experience. It could be fun. They just will have to go up on stage if they win and get their picture taken. Carrie doesn't want to vote for them, but Tommy convinces her, and it's all really sweet and cute. I don't remember in what order everything is happening exactly, but we see that Chris and Billy are there under the stage preparing to use the bucket of blood. Sue also shows up. I don't know what you thought was happening there.
I thought she was in on it.
Yeah. So what is really happening is that Sue just wants to see Carrie happy. She wants to get to witness, like she feels good about giving Carrie this experience and she wants to see it for herself.
But I thought she was there to witness the bloodening.
So we get that very long one shot of Norma and her boyfriend, Norma, baseball cap girl, and her boyfriend, who I believe his name is Harry, rigging the votes.
Well, there's
Did I miss
the
something?
long sequence where Carrie and Tommy are
they're dancing.
and it's that spin around shot that lasts for an extraordinarily long time. And it is very, if I were to guess at director intent, it would be that teenage romance is disorienting and having a moment like this where everything is going right can make you feel like your world is spinning. But holy shit, that shot goes on for so long.
It does go on for so long, and it made me dizzy.
And it goes so fast. And it did take me out of the movie a little bit because I was just wondering, I'm just picturing the camera guys spinning around and the actors spinning independently and everyone getting so dizzy and however many takes they had to do of that shot.
God.
And it is one long unbroken shot. So it was a technically impressive shot, but also uncomfortable and, you know, in a way that probably was intentional, but it also,
Carrie reminds me.
I don't know that it works amazingly.
Yeah. No, I don't really like that shot, although I do think it is an interesting one. Carrie reminds me of a toddler in that scene because she keeps asking why. Why this? Why this? And he's like, Tommy's answering her and everything is followed up with another why. And then at the end of it, her last question is, why did you invite me? And he says, because you liked my poem. So it all comes back to the poem, although he also says he didn't actually write it. Someone else did.
Yeah.
So it's kind of just a weird throwaway thing. I think that does happen before the ballot rigging scene. And then they win. And they go up on stage and everybody is cheering for them. And Carrie is so happy. She gets her crown, she gets her flowers, and Sue is watching on and she's delighted and she's so thrilled for them. And then she feels a pulling because her hand is on the rope that is attached to the bucket of blood.
Yeah, and she follows the rope to the bucket and sees it up there.
And she realizes that Chris and Billy are underneath the stage. And so she tries to go and confront them in what I think is one of the most tragic moments of the whole movie, in terms of, you mentioned before about all the things that could have gone differently. Miss Collins seeing Sue and assuming that she is the one trying to commit a prank and throwing her out is...
Even though she's pointing right at Chris and Billy, who are not well hidden.
They are not. But Miss Collins didn't trust Sue and Tommy. She thought that I think, still believed that they may have been doing this as a way of hurting Carrie. And so I think she just doesn't see beyond what she wants to. And she throws Sue out.
This was a, oh no moment for me.
Yeah.
So this was, because that's when I really did realize that she wasn't in on it.
Because she's trying to stop them.
She sells it really well too. And so.
Which her acting is really good because there's no dialogue at this point. It's all just face and gesture acting to make it clear that she is horrified and is trying to be like, no, they're going to do something.
And she gets thrown out, but that does save her life.
It does save her life. That is true. But it does clear the way for Chris to pull the rope and dump the bucket of blood on Carrie.
The only reason I knew it was going to be pig's blood is because of the movie Scream, actually. I knew there was blood.
Yeah, pig's blood.
But yeah, they mentioned Randy's character says that they used corn syrup for the pig's blood in Carrie. So
You learn a lot about horror history from Scream.
Also, that was a lot of blood.
Yeah.
And it's like, how...
I don't know how much blood pigs have.
And the logistics of collecting, like how... And he was killing them with a sledgehammer.
Yeah,
like how
I don't want to think about it. But going back to that scene where we saw Chris
you probably
looking...
could have just asked the butcher. Like,
Yeah,
do you
right?
guys have blood that you're not... Can we just buy some pig's blood? There's
Yeah, but if that
some...
worked, I would have been like, excuse me, butcher, why are you just giving pig's blood to a bunch of teenagers?
Like, buy it.
Why are you selling pig's blood to a bunch of teenagers? They cannot be up to any
Capitalism.
good, I guess. But in the pig farm scene, Chris is super turned on by the violent killing of the pig. And then here again in the prom scene, when she's about to pull the rope, we see her very sensually lick her lips. Like, this girl is...
Women sinning. Women be sinning.
That women be sinning.
That is the thesis statement of Carrie.
It really is.
Women be sinning. We
Carrie
missed the scene too, right before the bucket drop. There's a shot of Carrie's mom just being angry at home, chopping vegetables, and every vegetable she chops just falls on the floor.
Yeah, and she keeps chopping the board with nothing there. She is losing her mind.
But then the bucket drops.
The blood spills on Carrie, and then Tommy says, what the hell? I mean, there's no sound, but you see him mouth, and he's gesturing. He's mad, so now we know Tommy definitely not in on the prank either.
And then he gets taken out by the bucket. An empty metal bucket lays Tommy out. I'm like, isn't he supposed to be an athlete?
Yeah.
That's not...
Maybe it just hit him in the exact
maybe
right
he had,
place.
Maybe this movie had a very early understanding of CTE, and he was a football player. And
oh,
he
yeah.
had taken too many tackles, so he got hit.
It's like in Not Another Teen Movie when they have the Reggie's concussion countdown.
Yeah.
You can only get so many more blows to the head before you die.
So yeah, he gets his he gets knocked out by a bucket to the head.
We do see a lot of the students and teachers' reactions, and they are upset. But then we see Carrie's perspective, and she is hearing Margaret saying they're all going to laugh at you. And we see that she believes that everyone is laughing at her, including Miss Collins and Tommy's friend and his date, who we know are upset.
Yeah, the way the scene played out was very interesting because after the bucket splash, the only sound until you hear Margaret's voice is the splashing sound repeated over and over again, which was an interesting choice. I don't know that it worked as well as it's supposed to, because after a while it just sounds like someone in the sound booth hitting the pig blood splash button over and over again. Yeah, it was very clear that it was the same sound effect just looped over and over and over again. So it was an interesting decision that went on probably a little bit too long, which is, I would say, maybe that's the problem with this movie. There's a lot of interesting decisions that go on a little bit too long. The shower scenes, the spinning dance scene, the splashy sound effects, really interesting dynamic filmmaking decisions, but lingering for just long enough to go past the line of, we're not making the viewer uncomfortable because it's a horror movie. We're making the viewer uncomfortable because Brian De Palma is kind of weird.
Yeah. That's very fair. So Carrie just goes on a telekinetic spree. She locks all of the doors. She turns on a fire hose that is very powerful and is knocking people out.
Hat Girl.
Yeah. So, and actually, something that I know about the filming of this scene is that Brian De Palma wanted the fire hose spray to look powerful and realistic, even though a fire chief was like, well, you should not put it on full blast because it's dangerous.
Yeah.
But he insisted upon it. And PJ Souls, who is the actress playing Norma, it ruptured her eardrum.
Oh, geez.
So the moment when she slumps over after getting hit with the water is real, more or less, because she didn't have a sense of equilibrium after her eardrum ruptured.
Oh, God bless 1970s safety for movies.
Yeah. Carrie kills Miss Collins with, is it the backboard of the baseball net or some sporting equipment?
Yeah.
People get crushed trying to exit the doors before she locks them. She starts a fire. Like, there's just a lot happening.
Yeah, well, the first people who die, I thought it was funny because I'm like, oh, well, they're just getting hosed. Like, people are just getting hosed. And I'm like, oh, this isn't, I'm like, if I I were Carrie, I would be using the hose to just wash the blood off of me. But people are just getting hosed and scared. The first deaths come because of ungrounded microphones.
Oh, yeah, because of electrocution.
And I'm like, if they had just followed proper electrical safety and the microphone had been correctly grounded, then I think it was creepy English teacher and principal, maybe?
Yes, the principal was there.
Principal and creepy English teacher got zapped because of that. And I think that's technically what starts the fire.
I
is
think
the electrical.
so. There's a lot of chaos happening.
There is a lot of chaos happening. Here's what confused me, and I wondered if it was a little more clear in the book. People seem to understand that Carrie is doing this. She's just standing there looking weird.
Yeah.
I get that she's given eyeballs at everything, but she's not even doing like a traditional movie thing where you're flinging your hands, like moving, using the force or whatever. Like, she's not even using her hands. She's just standing there giving the stink eye to everything. Yeah. But people seem to start yelling Carrie, and they seem to understand that Carrie is doing this and are trying to get her to stop. And it's not clear how they know that, because I would just be thinking, oh no, ghosts or whatever.
Or just faulty electricity.
Yeah. Well, the fire hose is a little harder to
I guess
explain.
that's true. I'm going to get into a little bit here about what is different from the book, because in the book, Carrie leaves the gym. She locks the doors from the outside, and she does all of this mayhem without being in the gym.
Interesting.
She then walks home, and she is destroying other parts of the town. She is blowing up gas stations, and hundreds of people that are not at the school die as a result of her wreaking havoc. And she sends a telepathic message across the town that lets them know that she is the one who is doing this.
Oh. Is it because, has she just lost control? Is it that she feels that everyone's been out to get her?
It's that she feels like the whole town is implicated in her abuse, and she's just lashing out because she's been mistreated, and she wants everyone to pay the price.
That's not clear in the movie. In the movie, they leave out her wrecking anywhere else. So it's really just the school.
Also, people do escape in the book. Sue is not the only survivor. There are other students who are able to escape the gym, and Miss Collins, or Miss Desjardins in the book, that she gets out. Oh. So there are other survivors.
Huh. That's interesting. I wonder why they changed that. I understand why they would want to have her
there
in the gym. That is much more visually interesting. The iconic image of her covered in the blood with her eyes
and the red
looking
lighting,
all big, the red lighting and the fire and everything else. It is a very good visual image. Yeah. So I understand why that changed. I don't understand why they left out her murdering everyone else, other than it does make her a little more sympathetic. It would be a little harder for you to feel sympathy for her if she just turns into a rampage.
Yeah.
But it also would feel more like a horror movie and less like a tragedy. So it's an interesting choice. I wonder why.
It may have also been, I don't know, harder to film citywide telekinetic chaos than just keeping it contained to the gym set. I don't know. I don't know if it was a storytelling decision or if it was a filming decision. I'm not entirely sure. But that is a difference between the movie and the book. And it does explain how people would not know that it was Carrie, because it's only the people who survive long enough to get her telepathic message taking credit for the destruction that would know. And it is something that I questioned at the end of the movie when Sue has the dream and sees Carrie White burns in hell.
Right.
How did they know that it was Carrie?
That doesn't make any sense.
Because Sue is the only survivor, and she doesn't know that it's Carrie because she can't get into the gym.
Right. So that it doesn't necessarily make any sense in
I guess maybe because it is not just the gym in the movie, it is also Carrie's house. So perhaps people could put two and two together that if Carrie's house was demolished and the gym was incinerated and all of those people, I don't know. I'm not sure.
We didn't mention that Billy and Chris had also gotten out.
Yeah. Oh, that's true. Billy and Chris do get out. They, I think, realize that Carrie is doing it because they are still in there when everything starts and they're able to escape. And then after Carrie causes all of this destruction, she leaves the gym, and it is that shot of her walking through all of this turmoil covered in blood as she's walking very slowly, that is iconic. And she leaves and she's walking down the street, and Billy and Chris are driving behind her, and Chris is going to hit her with the car,
which also unclear why. If you were just trying to prank her and then weird crazy shit was happening, just get out of there.
Yeah, but I guess because they do know that she's doing it.
Yeah, if you think that she's responsible for all of this, then I don't know, maybe also get out of there.
Yeah.
there's not a lot of reason for
Billy
them.
and Chris have not demonstrated
they have not demonstrated good
decision-making skills.
Frontal lobe development in this movie.
So Chris is going to hit her with the car, and at the last minute, Carrie turns and flips the car. It explodes. Bye-bye, Billy and Chris.
Well, 1970s vehicles.
Yeah.
What are you going to do?
Carrie gets home and she takes a bath, and this scene skeeves me out because she's like, the water turns bloody and then she's using it to rinse her face, but I guess there was no shower, so her options were limited. But anyway, she cleans herself up, she gets changed into some pajamas, and she goes looking for her mother for comfort, which
abused kids.
Yeah. And Margaret tells her about her conception, that her parents had sex once before they were married, and then Margaret insisted on having a marriage without sex. But one night while he was drunk, her husband raped her essentially. But she liked it, as she says. And that is how Carrie was conceived. And so Margaret says a couple of things like, I should have killed myself when he put it in me the first time, and I should have sent you to Jesus when you were born.
Yeah, Margaret needs therapy.
Yeah, but she's not going to get it, because instead she stabs Carrie, which you seemed very upset about. I looked over and you were pouting.
I was very upset because Carrie, at this point,
poor Carrie.
Again, in the movie, Carrie lost control and accidentally killed her high school, which sucks. But it was not framed in a way that was like with malice aforethought. She wasn't setting out on a vengeance killing spree. So I was just sad because Carrie had had a very hard life, and all of a sudden now she's got an abusive mom, and her abusive mom stabs her. And I thought this was going to be the end of Carrie, and I was sad about it. It turns out that it was almost the end of Carrie, but not for because then Carrie turns the tables and is able to get away from stabby mom, and then telekinetically knife her in all of the ways.
And spatula her.
Yeah, because the last thing that hits her in the heart is just a spatula. She ran out of knives.
Yeah.
So then they just use a spatula, and the spatula goes into her mom. I have a question about this.
Yeah.
So her mom gets stabbed and strung up in exactly the same pose as the creepy glowing eye saint.
Mm-hmm.
Her mom then is dying, more or less orgasms.
Yeah.
She is in the throes of what looks like orgasming while she's dying.
Yeah.
And the movie is clumsily trying to tie together all of this stuff about sin and power and sex and her mom's sex negativity. Is there more detail about that in the book, or is that a movie thing?
This is not how Margaret dies in the book.
Okay.
She is not crucified in this way. Carrie stops her heart.
And that's much more subtle, less visually dynamic.
That's why they changed it for the movie. Because although, if I recall correctly, in the 2013 remake with Chloe Grace Moretz and Julianne Moore, they do the heart-stopping death scene. But as far as I'm aware, they chose to do this more visually interesting death because a heart-stopping.
It is a lot more visually interesting. It's also a lot more on the nose. It was like, okay, yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
It's the exact same pose as creepy glowing eye saint. But then the whole orgasming while she's dying.
I don't think that comes into play in the book. I don't know that she's writhing in ecstasy as she's dying in the book. So
it's and again, am I not smart enough to get what's happening here? Or is Brian DePalma just a big perv?
It might be a combination of
Might
the
be
two.
a little bit both.
Yeah.
I might be a
little
bit
column A,
stupid,
little column D.
and he might be a little bit
D.
of a perv.
D for Dan. It may be filmmaking choices that are not accessible to the everyday viewer, and also that Brian DePalma is a perv. I don't know.
After Carrie's mom dies, then Carrie drags her body to her shame closet, and it's unclear if it's on purpose or is just happening because Carrie can't control her powers, but then their house collapses in on itself.
I think it's supposed to be deliberate, that she's horrified by what she's done, and so she decides to kill herself and take the house with her. Some other differences in the book: Margaret does stab her. She stops Margaret's heart. Then she leaves the house again. That is when she kills Billy and Chris. She goes after them instead of the other way. But she sees them leaving town and she goes after them, and then they try to hit her with the car and she flips it and kills them.
That makes so much more sense.
Yeah. And then she is laying down in a parking lot, succumbing to her stab wound, and Sue finds her. And at this point, Carrie thinks that Sue and Tommy were in on it, but they have a sort of telepathic communication. Carrie is able to learn from Sue in that moment that they were not in on it, and then she dies.
That is a lot better.
Yeah.
And it makes me wonder why they changed it, because it works better thematically. It works better from just a story arc. It also works better as a horror movie. You could spend a little less time watching teenage girls work out in weird tracking shots and a little more time on Carrie being a horror movie monster, and it would be a better movie. So it's really interesting, those choices that they made and why they made them, because what I think it does is it makes her more tragic and less scary.
Yeah.
So the movie as it exists now wasn't particularly scary at all, but the idea that you have this unhinged X-Man going through town murdering everyone because she was bullied, it's a much more interesting idea, which I can understand why that would be Stephen King's first successful novel and why it launched his career.
And the other thing that I think is interesting to note about the book is that it's epistolary. So it is everything that is being described. There's a lot that is taking place after the events of this story. And we are getting interviews. There's a framing device that there's like a congressional hearing about what happened and about Carrie's paranormal abilities. And there are interviews with people who survived. Sue writes a novel or a memoir about what happened. So there are bits and pieces of firsthand accounts of the events of that night that are all being presented.
Now I want to read it, actually. That sounds a lot more interesting because the movie doesn't start that you know something bad is going to happen. So if you had no idea, if you didn't have the pop culture image of Carrie covered in blood fucking shit up, you wouldn't necessarily know that that was going to happen. But the book more or less lets you know up front that there's a tragedy and bad things are going to happen, and it's because of this girl. So you've got this sense of foreboding dread coming and how everything is leading to this. That is so much more interesting. It makes me think that there's definitely a better movie there. It also makes me sad that they fumbled the ball on the 2013 version, because apparently no one liked that version. But it sounds like there's a much better movie here. Like I said, I didn't dislike this movie. It was entertaining. I can understand why it's a classic, because it is so visually interesting, because the performances are great, but it's definitely missing something. And that would be what it was missing.
My question for you is, will you watch any of the other versions with me?
Yeah, maybe.
And see how they handled the material?
I'm definitely curious to check out the Chloe Grace Moretz version.
And you want to rewatch the original so you can see through a lens of knowing that Sue and Tommy are good kids trying to do a good thing.
Yeah.
And they end up dead and traumatized.
Yes. Poor Sue. The end of the movie is Sue in bed and her mom having a conversation with someone talking about how, first of all, she's like, Sue's young enough that she won't remember. I'm like, she is a full on, she's 17, 18. She's going to remember all of this.
She's going to remember
until she dies.
Even a younger child would remember it. I mean, there are studies that trauma, even in your pre-memory stage, can impact impact you throughout your life.
No, this
but
girl's
not in 1976.
gonna
I guess.
have super PTSD forever. And then Sue has the dream sequence, which I wasn't 100% sure that it was a dream sequence. It does make I assume the Carrie White Burns in Hell is probably from the book, and
I think
makes
so.
a lot more sense. But she has that dream sequence about going to see Carrie's cross memorial thing at the side of her house.
It's because it also, there's a for sale sign, but it is also a cross, and then it has spray painted Carrie White Burns in Hell.
It's very confused.
Who put that there? I mean, I don't know.
It looks like religious iconography 101. Like somebody just like read a Cliff's Notes of what are some religious images that we can use here.
Yeah. I will tell you that this dream sequence was shot backwards, and
you could tell because I didn't know why, other than to maybe give it a dreamy
to make it seem kind of ethereal.
But they did too good of a job. She I guess did it too well, because the only way that you can tell is there's a car driving backwards in the back, and I wasn't even sure if you were supposed to see that or if that was just an error. So they didn't go out of their way to make it obvious that the rest of the world was going backwards. If they had done it a little bit differently, like if you had seen more cars or there were other things like, I don't know, a bird flying backwards or something like that, it would have been a little bit more
I don't know if
obvious.
it was supposed to be, if you were supposed to know that it was, but it was filmed backwards and then played in reverse to give it that dreamy, unreal quality.
It just looked like it was in slow motion, except for the car going backwards, and which was like, all right, interesting.
And then there's a final jump scare. Carrie's bloody arm comes shooting out of the ground.
Scare.
Yeah,
this
it is.
movie doesn't have jump scares.
That's true.
Which I don't love. I don't love jump scares in movies.
I almost warned you, but I thought that you would be mad at me for warning you.
I would have been mad at you.
Yeah,
so thank you for not. It wasn't a particularly scary jump scare. It also doesn't make sense, but then
except it's a dream.
Sue wakes up screaming, and you know that she's going to have a rough time for the rest of her life.
Yes, she is. Well, that's Carrie.
That's Carrie.
You're glad you watched it?
I am glad I watched it.
It's a classic. I mean, it is a classic.
It is a classic. I can see it's interesting, the film history of it, the ties to a movie that is dear to me, Star Wars, but it is a very visually arresting movie. It owes a lot of debt to Citizen Kane and to Orson Welles. And you can see how DePalma was part of that group, including George Lucas, Steven Spielberg, Martin Scorsese, the guys in the 70s who really brought a lot of innovation to American movies. So you can see why it was so influential and why it was such an important movie for film history. It was a good movie. I would maybe give it a B-.
Okay.
It felt like it was missing something. That missing something is apparently there in the original story and just didn't make it to the adaptation. And it felt like it had stuff it didn't need.
Yeah.
Very lurid, weird, out of place things that didn't contribute to the storytelling. So it's very clearly a movie of its time, but it was good.
Yeah. It sounds like you are on the same page as Stephen King, who more recently, I don't remember exactly when, but said that Carrie is dated, but it's a good movie. So
it is.
Even Stephen King, you're right there together.
Well, I guess I just need to do some cocaine and move to Maine, and then we're set for life.
Perfect. Any other thoughts?
I wrote down at one point, perm conspiracy. That would be
the 70s.
A good subtitle for this movie.
Yeah, really.
Carrie conspiracy.
a perm conspiracy. I love it. Well, on that note, thank you for listening. Until next time, I'm Heather.
I'm Dan.
And this has been Blind Spots and Second Thoughts.